Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight's program, A Starry Sky on the Horizon for a Sustainable Guilford, is co-sponsored by the Guilford Free Library and the Guilford Conservation Commission. This time I'd like to introduce Laura Collins from the Guilford Conservation Commission to tell you more about tonight's program and to introduce our speaker. So welcome, Laura Collins.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I brought my phone up here to remind everybody to turn down the volume on your phones. The last time I did a presentation, I was standing up here and my sister was texting me. So I realized it's a good reminder for us all. So just mute it or whatever. So once again, the Conservation Commission is thrilled to have you here. And let me tell you a little bit about our speaker tonight. His name is Bob Creelan. He's from Brantford, so he's local. And he is an award-winning designer, author, and inventor, creator of the patented Glare Buster Luminaire, a pioneering dark sky lighting product. Bob is also the author of books and several feature articles, including his milestone children's story, There Once Was a Sky Full of Stars. And I understand someone here tonight has that book. She didn't bring it, though.
Oh, yes. I bring it, I read it to my granddaughter.
All right. So once again, There Once Was a Sky Full of Stars is the name. A Walter Scott Houston Award winner for his work changing policy and perceptions, Bob is known internationally for his early efforts in establishing municipal and state outdoor lighting laws to minimize light pollution affecting communities. He still consults townships and cities around the world, including ours. Bob Creelan is also a 30-plus year designer in the musical instrument industry, where his work continues to influence trends in instrument design. So before I ask him to step up, I would like to let you know that we appreciate the support that the town has shown over the years of the Conservation Commission and its efforts on our preserves and our lands. And if you have any interest in getting more information or becoming involved in any of our properties, we have a wonderful land stewardship committee that actually goes out and brings their chainsaws and helps keep the trails in a good, healthy state and safe. If you'd like to join any of us, over on the table, on the counter there, I've left a sign-up sheet, so just let us know. And I would like to acknowledge with thanks the stalwart members of the Conservation Commission. Patrizia DiLeonardo is in the back there, and she is our technical expert. Janet Ainsworth. Janet actually was responsible for finding our speaker this evening. Thank you, Janet. Alan Fairbank, Patricia Keegan, Joseph Nugent, and our newest member is Doug Clark. And Doug actually is the chair of our Land Stewardship Committee, and now he's actually a commission member. And also I would like to thank Kevin McGee. He's the town's environmental planner. And he's our connection with Town Hall and with the town offices, and we would be nothing without Kevin, so thank you, Kevin. So now I'd like to introduce Bob Creelan, and we're going to hear a little bit about Starry Skies. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. Well, I first want to start out by saying I'm a local. I have been in this area for my whole life. I was in Guilford in the Sugarloaf Hills for 14 years and just moved back to Brantford. Brantford prior to that. And so, yeah, I was up there with the little bit more Milky Way than we have in Brantford, which was sad to leave, but you know, it's all part of my efforts and what I do in bringing awareness about how light is changing our night environment. And the title and what surrounds the description of this program, in this instance, has a lot to do with starry skies and you know, the beauty of the night, which is great. And this is how I got into it in the first place, because I was always interested in astronomy since I was very young. And I wound up getting a telescope in the early 1990s and began to really get into observing the night sky and studying all about the universe, which is endless and something I'll do for the rest of my life and never get even to scratch the surface of. So this is this is a great thing that everybody's got in their heart because it's part of who we are. You know, the night is it's half of our daily diurnal existence. So it's something that we all are familiar with, but are becoming less and less familiar with, especially for young people now, because we are losing a big part of what makes night night. And night's darkness has begun to fade. And so this got me very involved in working with working to help the reasons to do something about the causes that have affected our night environment, to be able to turn us around, because it just didn't make any sense to me. It doesn't really make any sense to most folks once you really look at it for what it is. So, you know, when I was driving over here, I was thinking of, you know, every time I do this talk, like there's new technology and there's new lighting, science, and more understanding. And that part of it is very similar to what we're learning about environmental things, especially about things like food and how we're affected by food in a way we never understood before. So our knowledge is now catching up with the technology and the production and the marketing of everything that we've had around us, where we're starting to now have to stop and slow everything down and take a second look at it. And lighting is one of these things, and it's far more crucial than you would expect, because it is one of those environmental things that is a very important trigger to our physiology, to our actual hormones that we produce. And you'll find out about this as we go, and I say our hormones, that every living thing on this earth is affected. So what I want to do is I've got a lot of visuals here that help explain the story, and we can even use our own eyes for some of this, which is always great, because it's it'll really drive the point home. And all of this is really win-win. What I'm talking about is, I'm not talking about one of these, you know, crazy special interest things of trying to get out there and you know, rattle the trees and say, you know, you gotta change the course of history, I mean, we do, but this is one that's painless, and it's just a matter of awareness. Awareness is really the biggest thing standing in the way of change. And we benefit from every aspect of it, as do every other living thing on this planet. So I'm going to roll into the slides here so that you can get a little background on light and get we can sort of roll ourselves into the whole story and how we got to where we are. So can we get the room lights down? Is that okay?
Right.
Okay, so, shedding a new light on light. Okay. Now, light, the original source of light that can everybody see okay? Is this good for you? Okay. The original source of light, of course, is the sun. And our days are full of the sun as it traverses the sky, as Earth is rotating. And it's the light we know best. Its brightness, its color, are all things that we have grown up under as living things on Earth. So it is one of the most important, not just for providing light for us to see, but for many things, giving us the heat and the warmth and the plants to grow and so forth. So this is our reference point. This is our key reference point, is the sun. And our bodies are so tuned to the sun and its cycle which is yearly as well as daily. I mentioned the day, but yearly you've got the way we've got shorter days in the winter and our nice big long days that are just happening now that we all love. And then our transitions into our night hours are when the sun is setting like this around, sunset or a little past, where now we have the transition going from all that bright light from the sun into a very dark environment, devoid of the sun. And these transitions are very, very slow. And I mention this, we all know this, but I mention this because this is all what we are tuned to. This is what our physiology is built around, these slow changes from a very, very bright environment to a very, very dark environment. And this, the transitions are always nice and slow in between. So we are built exactly for that. And of course, nighttime, which for as long as living things have been on this earth, up until just recently, in the last, oh geez, I mean, especially the last 50, 60 years, we've had this incredible view of everything that's up in that sky when the sun isn't there shining down on us. And, you know, here, this is my nephew, Eddie, up in Vermont at my brother's house, where there's very little cities and ambient light around from homes and so forth, and the Milky Way is just screaming across the sky, beautiful. Something that I remember actually in Brantford when I was a kid, one horizon to the other, and still could see, you know, a bit up in North Guilford when I was up there the last 14 years. So this is what we have. This is what the whole environmental light or no light environment has been for us in our life cycle for over all these years. Now, in about 1879, Thomas Edison, you see here, you've all heard his name, finally figured out, and he wasn't the only guy, but a few folks around the same time were figuring out how to actually create a electrical light source, a light bulb. In this case, he's got one of his first prototypes here, where he was going to be able to use electricity to bring what was now gaslight, candles, and things like that, very soft lighting that we did have in the night, into something far greater that has brought about what we have today in lighting. And the first dreams of what we could do outside with lighting was shown here in these illustrations. These are drawings showing, oh, this will be great, we can recreate the sun. We'll get these huge tall towers, as you can see, and get the lights, bright light sources up there and shine everything down, and then everybody will be able to live just like they do during the day. You know, this was the idealized vision for electric lighting. So, 1915 Panama Pacific Exhibition. This is what was, it's pretty much what the World's Fair grew out of. This was a huge, all new technology of the day in 1915, and this is where electric lighting got its debut. And this is a photograph, colorized photograph, that is basically showing you they went to the nth degree here, just, you know, lighting everything they possibly could, and the fireworks to celebrate it as well. So, you know, why not? This was the wonderful new world of a new technology. And, you know, who's gonna think any differently? What an incredible thing. You know, this is no knock on technology. This is all about, wow, look at this, look what we did at this time. So this now, 3 years later, we have the first book giving the guidelines of basic street lighting, okay? This was one of the first uses of public lighting. And street lighting, copyright 1918, Hall of Fame Glass Company still is a lighting company, believe it or not. And they put out some very, very simple guidelines at the dawn of lighting here. And I highlighted them here, which you can see that as a first result of this study, now this is the study of using street lights, it was apparent that light above the horizontal must be conserved and sent downward. Light above the horizontal must be conserved and sent downward. Makes sense, of course, this is where you're using it down here, right? And then the other highlighted portion, glare serves seriously to reduce the discerning power of the eye. This is a really important one, because they recognize this right at the outset. Details and more distant objects can be equally well seen at much lower illuminations and hence at much lower costs when glare is avoided or minimized. Unbelievable. A revelation. I'm sorry I'm being silly, but it's if you think about lighting, probably, throughout your life, if you think about that glare thing, well, you'll see, I'll show you. Okay, so a lot of technologies going on right here, and a lot of emerging wonderful things. Film, oh my goodness. All the stories we could tell, now you could go into a theater and really experience them on this great big screen. And you have these wonderful happy stories, wonderful hero stories, and then you also have these incredible, the ones I loved, the monster movies where things were in the dark, and dark started to really become a 4-letter word. And scary, and now you could really, it wasn't, you weren't just reading in a book, you could see things now, coming out of the dark in these films, and that was really starting to imprint the night's darkness as, I don't know about that. Not intentional, just, that's a wonderful setting for these stories. So, time's going on now, the emerging market of lighting is happening, and advertising. Of course, advertising, none of us believe advertising, It's, here we've got an example, you can't convince a mother that street lighting costs too much, and this horrible example that nobody would ever want to have to experience or to have to be in any situation, anything like this, where because there's not a street light, your children are at risk out there. And, granted, there's a valid concern here, but, this became part of a marketing thing. If you read on through the rest of it, it's basically saying all these things are happening because you don't have lighting. All this stuff is on the rise. You need to get out there and get that lighting. And then Street Lighting Magazine, this came out in 1950, and now you can see, now it's like the machine is really moving, because the job of selling the modernization of street lighting is, in the final analysis, a job of molding public opinion. Yes. So we want to make sure, now, this is marketing. It's always been and it always will be. Okay, so we light for a primary reason for our organs within our head, the eye, okay? The eye is where we're going to benefit from the lighting, because it's sight, it's visualization that light is benefiting us. I know I don't have to explain that. So the light levels, as you saw in that street lighting booklet, the light levels, they can play upon how we see, how we perceive, and how well things are discerned, how we use the lighting. So light levels, okay, so let's see what that means. All right. In a night environment, now remember, the first slides I showed you, you've got eyes that are built for really, really bright sunlight, the slow transitions from bright sunlight to nighttime, and then darkness. Now, we're sort of kind of combining these two worlds now. We're now bringing eyes that are built for one or the other and adjust to one or the other, and now we're now mixing them up. So now we've got, okay, so here's an example it was a great little example done with models here, where in this example they say the cafe, this little cafe, appears adequately lit, okay? Now, you're looking at this place, you're thinking, oh yeah, I can drive in that parking lot, looks great. I can see what I'm doing, go right into the cafe, everything's great. Until the brightly lit auto sales facility is built across the street. Now, you see over on the left there, we do have that same Lumen Cafe, but comparatively, your eye is now saying, oh, there's something much brighter in my field of view, and I am going to adjust to that, because that's our sensitivity to light. At night, you're so attuned, your eyes are so attuned to looking for the brightest thing, it's going to adjust immediately to whatever is the brightest thing in the field of view, wherever you're looking. So in this instance, this is when you've got, oh, okay, well, car dealerships, and they're one that use this marketing plan a lot, where they light everything really, really bright, so it's almost like daylight. But now you've got other businesses, like the cafe over there, that is not necessarily, you know, is using what really is needed, and your eye compares the two, and all of a sudden, you're like, ooh, I don't know, that little cafe looks kind of sketchy, I don't know if I'd go in there, it's kind of dark. But as you saw before, you know, without the comparison for your eye, you didn't see that. So this is how our eyes work. They adjust to the brightest thing in the field. And during the day, that's the sun, and you're accustomed to very, very well lit things. So this is a real life example of a car dealership, like I explained here. This is right along, in East Haven, right along 95. You've probably driven by this a lot. And tons of white light. Now, the bluish white light you see there is very much like the sun, so it's your eyes are very accustomed to this and are ready to go, oh yeah, that's it. And now, as this bright car dealership sitting here, your eye is saying, oh, okay, well, you know, that's what I'm supposed to be looking at, and you adjust to that brightness. In probably the 1990s, the campaign for, the marketing campaign for gas stations, the gas station canopies like this became like the car dealerships, where it was like, okay, you've got mobile down the street, you've got Hespe on that, who's the brightest, who's gonna get the business? The brightest one, you know? So we started to ratchet up levels of how bright different businesses would be. So that it just continued to be a feeding frenzy, and as you can see, you get quite a bit of lighting. Fast food, same idea. Well, let's see, if McDonald's is gonna be bright, then Burger King is gonna be brighter. You know, and I'm just using them as examples. I mean, this is something that we've all been watching over time and not necessarily recognizing how bright it's really getting. So glare, we remember that word came up in the original street lighting book, and how it serves seriously to affect your ability to discern things at night. Why? Because when it's really bright like that, and when I say glare, I mean you're looking at that really bright, like the bulb itself. And your eye tends to adjust to that as if you're in daytime, yet there's night all around that light. So you tend to only see that bright glare. This is what got us started in, gentleman Leo Smith and myself. We passed a law in Connecticut in 2003 for floodlighting in the right-of-way along the street. Now basically, the power companies could put up very inexpensively a floodlight like this on a pole to shine on businesses that were nearby. But these things, they could put them up during the day because you don't even have to aim them. They spray light everywhere. And at night, this is basically what you're looking at. Now, of course, you'll see over here, this is the business where that light is intended, but here's you, the driver. I've got the driver's perspective coming down the street, and you're getting nailed right in the eye with that bright light, which doesn't need to be in the street. And so this was the beginning of where I was able to, with Leo, go to the state legislature and say, you know, this is a public safety hazard. It's not intentional, but this is really very detrimental to the ability to see when you're driving. Because the camera, this is, you know, everything you're gonna see here, I did this so long ago, it's all on film. But the camera, you know, a large 50mm lens camera, you know, beyond that shadow line you see right there over on the left on the street, on this slide you can see beyond that. But when you're there in the street just looking, your eye's aperture is nothing like a camera aperture. So it's a blind zone beyond that. And if there were, God forbid, a child on a bike or something like that, you know, you might not see them until it's too late, because you're sort of rounding a corner here too. So, very clear problem. Car dealership, yeah, this has since been changed through the laws I passed in Branford, and Thank goodness again here, this is where the light, this is long after the business is closed, and these floodlights were so bright and shining straight out at the street. The way security happens in this type of business is the police will drive by and they can look in and surveil a place, but, you know, here, if you looked in, there could be a keg party going on under the light, you probably wouldn't see it. You know, it's crazy, I mean, so anyways, a lot of this stuff, a lot of what you're seeing here has been corrected, thank goodness. So, okay, so light trespass. These are all the concerns that we're adding up, okay, of public concerns that have nothing to do with, you know, oh, I can't see the stars thing, because I know that was gonna be a much harder conversation to have when trying to affect policy. So light trespass is just what it sounds like. Over on the left side here, you've got a grocery store whose intention is to light the parking lot when they're open, which they're not open, this is after business. As you can see, this is the end of the parking lot, probably where that sign is, that's pretty much the boundary. But over here, this is an apartment building right here that, you know, folks probably have bought some pretty thick curtains for, because this is all night long.
Is that Karen's Corner?
I'm sorry?
I think it's Karen's Corner.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not like that anymore. They were very cooperative in fixing it, so. Most businesses are. Once you point out the awareness is what it's all about. And this was several years ago at Karen's Corner. So, this is that floodlight that I showed you shining down the street that I spent so much time on talking about. This is the view of it from the other side. And so now if you're coming up the road the other way, you can see the business, the red building is the business it's intended to light, and yet the house, the actual residential home just beyond it and the one beyond that, now they're not, I think at least the second one is a business now, but these were residential homes, and they're just getting bathed with that light all night long. So it's just, you know, it's well intended, but it's sloppy. It's just sloppy with something we need to be much more careful with. And this is actually one of the big, it's a business in Guilford on Route 1, over on the eastern side, but it's, this was floodlights that the power company put up that basically were in a totally rural, we're surrounded by a totally rural area, so that the lights were just all night long shining into areas where any living thing that was there didn't have the ability to pull curtains or do anything like that. And this is where, you know, it's really a place we need to be much more cautious about using, especially all night lighting. So, energy waste. This, I haven't pulled this slide out of here yet because it still does affect, we still waste energy, even though LED lights that we use today that have basically replaced everything we had prior, and a lot of what you see here, use so much less energy. And we were so happy in the lighting world that it went this way to conserve energy. But the thing is, there was the other side of it, which was the light part of it that was still just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, even though the energy use was coming down. But if you're spraying it all over the place, you're wasting it. I used to run the stargazings at Young's Park in Brantford, and this was a very, very dark, clear night at about 11 o'clock at night. I took this picture. It was like, you know, 400 speed film, and it was a particular exposure. I can't remember how many seconds, but you know, whatever it was. I matched it again on a cloudy night. I went back down on a cloudy night, did the same exposure, same time of night, and this is the same view on a cloudy night. So what's happening is the clouds, the bellies of the clouds are showing us everything that is going up and is just completely serving no purpose at all. And this is a really big thing that you can notice anywhere now. Even here in Guilford, it's, you know, a cloudy night, you're gonna notice, even when the moon's not out, that the clouds glow. And it's because of what's actually coming up and hitting the clouds from the ground, unnecessarily, but it is. You know, an example of what some upward directed light billboards, they light them from the bottom. So these trees help show us that a lot of the light that's going that's designed for the face of the billboard is spraying far beyond it into these trees. These trees are showing you what's going upward. And this is in Branford, and this was part of our law that when the lighting was to be replaced on these signs, that they would shine from the top down. It's a little bit more for them to change bulbs, but now with LEDs, you change them so infrequently, it's like, it's not even an argument anymore. This, let's see if my pointer works here. Yeah, okay. Now, this is, in a lot of town renovation projects, you see this type of globe light, which is a very pretty thing. It's like a gaslight look, Currier and Ives, you know, that beautiful old time thing. But those lights were originally, the lanterns were originally gaslight. And so it was a very soft glow, beautiful, you know. But they figured, oh, we want that look because it looks great for downtowns. I agree, but the problem is when you stick these really powerful bulbs in there like this, what happens is the fixture, number one, is not really designed for good distribution of light, because you need the light down here for your areas of walking and driving and the staircase, but this wall helps show us where most of the light is coming out of this fixture. It's coming out about right here. That's where it's about the brightest spot right there. And you can see even what's going up by the shadow line here on the roof line. So, you know, it's a pretty fixture during the day. I'm all in agreement with that, but you know, these things were used all over the place, and these are contributors to uplight that cause those glowing clouds. Now this is a very old picture now. This was showing what was about 30% of all outdoor lighting shining up in the USA. And you know, there's nothing else illuminating but the light from the cities and roadways and so forth. And as you can see in our area, we're up against New York City, and it's quite bright there. You can see Long Island stretching out here. We're about, you know, right here. And you can even see 91 if you can make that out right there, going right up. So this is, God, I can't remember, it's just like 1996 or 97, I think, when this was taken. It would look far different today, and I may even have the world view on this one as we go along here. We'll take a look at that. So the other big reason, you know, we like to navigate at night, because one thing our extended day that we've known for so long, especially because of electric lighting, that we can keep businesses open, we can keep the roads lit, has been a great benefit to our vision at night. In some ways it's been a hampering thing, but this is all part of the conversation. But the other big reason that lighting is used, and it's used really heavily, is prevention of crime, or the perceived prevention of crime. So what a lot of folks would think is common sense without really stopping to delve into it might be that, you know, if you've got lighting, you've got security. As simple as that. But that's a really severe oversimplification of it. The reality is that, and it's no guarantee, that visibility may enhance security. Visibility is not glare. Visibility is when that light is actually helping you see. So what is Walmart in New Haven now was Kmart when they first built it off of 91. They lit it very, very brightly. Now, when you go into this parking lot, this is when it was brand new, you would probably feel like, oh wow, look at that parking lot. You know, I feel great in here. Everything's safe, everything's cool. But you know this is a perfect example, because the Kmart parking lot. No, this is all true. This is I think it was for the month of December in 1996. Yeah, it was the highest. That parking lot. The parking lot was the highest crime area for the entire state of Connecticut. You know, lit like it was, because you're not only lighting for everyone to see, but you're also lighting the interiors of cars, so it's like you're showing everything that is there to steal. And it's about opportunity. So the thought that, okay, if you make a bright parking lot, that crime just goes away, you know, it's just an old story. So I'll run through these quick. These are just, Chicago did a test because they wanted to find out, okay, we're about to change our lighting, so they went from the orangish kind of lights that used to be our street lights. You probably still have a lot of them here in town. The high pressure sodium, they're called. They're golden orange color. They had a lot of that in lighting the backs of their buildings in the downtown areas and the crime areas. And so they wanted to do a before and after. Okay, we're gonna go from that, which was kind of dim and, you know, I mean, it was lit, but it was, you know, just not that strong. They thought, oh, I gotta pump it up, you know, and really put in these blue-white lights that are much, much brighter. And so they brought them in. And so, yeah, here it is. The evaluation's aim was to assess the impact of increased alley lighting on crime in 2 areas. So it did not examine public fears or perceptions. This was just about before and after. So what happened was the red bar is showing the incidence of crime with the early lighting, the dimmer high pressure sodium lighting, and then the blue shows the incidence of crime after the new bright white lighting was installed. So, you know, just against what you might assume by the brighter lighting, that all of it would, you know, get less or maybe go away, increase across the board. So, you know, this was kind of funny. I like this one. Was, you know, it's like, so what is it about? And I used to present with Jules Granada, who was a great friend and a former police officer, and you know, he used to have to help them try to provide security ideas and methods for businesses. This was a survey amongst criminals who committed these sorts of break-in crimes, theft, and so forth. You know, what is the best deterrent in their experience? And basically, you've got right here, dog, number 1. Number 1. Do you see? You don't even see lighting on there, right? No lighting.
On a leash.
Yeah. So, but his funny story in a nutshell was basically they put a business was a stereo store in New Haven, I think it was, and they put bright lights all over the place on the place, and they kept getting broken into. The lights did nothing. So they finally put in a little recorder thing that played the sound of a Doberman running across the floor and barking, and sensors would turn it on, and that ended it right there.
So even fake dogs work.
So, you know, this is very, and, you know, he would tell that story, and then it was just great. Of course, the story's much longer than that, but, so, you know, vandalism, the intermediate school in Branford, where I used to always walk by years ago, you know, vandalism, it would get vandalized, it would get spray painted, you know, every once in a while, but the places where it would get spray painted is under the lights, not where the lights are not, because, you know, the artist wants to put their work on display. So yeah, I mean, as you can see, the lighting is, the doors are painted well, but the dark areas, no, there's no painting there. Okay, so now we're winding our way around to, okay, what I first began talking about, environmental art. So what's going on with all living things in this planet, us included, that have grown up for millions of years and have you know, had this day-night cycle, and our bodies being totally tuned to it. Okay, so what's going on? Well, the trees. Okay, yeah, this was, I had to put my daughter's letter in here, 7 years old, because I would take her out on these jaunts, you know. She actually could appreciate it, you know. Thank goodness, at 7 years old. But, you know, and this slide is actually kind of faded before I even scanned it in here. But the point of this image is, if you can see, and by her note, these bright white lights at Burger King, which you saw in an earlier slide, same Burger King, they just burned down that blue-white light onto the leaves of this tree. And where the light hit the tree most solidly, the cone of light that it hit, you can see is still all green while the rest of the tree is going into full fall foliage. So this is one aspect of light sensitivity in living things that you can witness. Again, another shot of where you can see where the lights are, where that light came down. Part of the tree is in full foliage and the other one is, and the part under the light is still green. So you've got a physiological confusion going on here. This was from my friend Susan Harder in Long Island. She would get great shots like this. This is the same tree. On the left, it's showing a earlier shot. As you can see the green, you can see the triangle of light that comes off of that street light there. And then as it progressed, the leaves hung on even longer where that cone of light was. So it is, you know, the tree is trying to figure out what's going on, because part of it is thinking, oh, well, yeah, it's fall, we're supposed to be one thing, you know? And then you've got the rest of the tree is confused. This is a time exposure showing the way that lights pull in the insects from far away, wherever they can see the actual light source. So if you've got an exposed light source, if you can see that actual glare or light trespass, bugs will go towards it because they're just naturally awake for daytime by the signal of light. And so what all the squiggly lines are moths and all sorts of flying creatures at night flying around that light, and then you typically find, you know, a bunch of dead ones underneath it because they're just continuously looking for, you know, where's the daylight, and they're not even supposed to be active at that time. Take it one step further, the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas, excuse me. Unbelievable beam that shoots out of that thing, as you can see there. Now, these are not bugs you see up there. Those trails are birds. And those birds will fly in there circling around, wondering where the heck the daytime is. And, you know, just as a sidebar, look at the clouds all around. The ambient light around Las Vegas is so there that the clouds are just constantly glowing like that. But yeah, this is a huge, there's a fatal light awareness program, FLAP, that you may have heard of with the birds, that they've been working on this alongside the astronomy interest people and anyone else that's got this in their heart, to try to change policy to not allow this kind of thing to happen, because dead birds, you know, like dead insects on the ground, because they just become exhausted trying to find the daytime that seems to be happening. And in Florida, sea turtles, they hatch out of their little nests in the sand, and they go towards the light, because they're supposed to be going towards just a soft glow that is bioluminescent glow that the water gives off. That's so soft, you know, we really can't perceive it like the turtles can. But, you know, one street light, you know, 10 miles away, even with that exposed light source, is going to be brighter than that. So they're going to go towards, if you can see on the slide, there's like circling trails, because the turtles are like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? And sadly, a lot of them, they wind up going out onto the street, or the predators come and get them, so they're losing tons of turtles down there. And this is an actual state, Florida statewide technical report that to change policy about lighting near the beach. So, how about us? The living things that we are, the animals that we are. More recent studies, this is of course 1998, this particular Science News story came out. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Richard Stevens, is quoted in a lot of these articles. He got the idea that they're trying to figure out what's about this increased breast cancer incidence that's happening, and he was looking for diet triggers and all sorts of things, and then suddenly started to realize that, wow, you know, could it have something to do with our exposure to light at night, not just being outside, but of course in our own households or working, you know, third shift or something like that. So this started to become a thing, and the research is fascinating, but it is really, really clear now through these studies that light is one of the key triggers that makes our hormone releases do what they do. And these are critical things to our health in fighting off cancers and so forth, which you'll see in some of the actual tests that they did here. This was a landmark study, which again, another fascinating, they try to do very, very particular ways of studying it. And I think in a nutshell, it was like they had a bunch of folks who were the study individuals on this, and they would put them to sleep and then wake them up in the middle of the night, and they would take a blood sample in a dark environment, like they were still in their sleep environment, and the other ones, they would take them and put them in a bright room immediately, and then take their blood sample from them in that environment. Now, those two blood samples, they had taken breast cancer cells, and they'd used, I think, rats or mice or something to actually, however they do it, to keep them alive by attaching them to the animal. And they kept the breast cancer cells alive, and then they would inject this blood into the actual cancer cells. And believe it or not, the ones from the samples from the individuals who had been exposed to the bright light at night, the cancer cell would grow. The same cancer cell would grow, whereas from the folks who were in the dark, it would still, nothing would happen, or very little would happen. So they wanted to really get down to the nitty-gritty about what is it, you know, what is going on. And it centered around melatonin. Melatonin is something we release, but we can only release it in the dark. If you sleep with bright lights in your room or night lights and stuff like that, you're inhibiting your ability to release melatonin. So this has become a really, really important part of understanding how light at night and the types of light and how we use it can be a really, really dangerous thing if we're not careful. As you can see right here, I'm going to let you read it. Yeah, that's about the cancer cells becoming insomniacs by exposing them to that melatonin-depleted blood. Even in an outdoor ambient light environment situation in Israel, a study was done where they just did a night mapping. This is aerial view of the ground, and what you're seeing is light exposure, ambient light exposure around these areas, these towns and villages. And they were looking at the incidence of breast cancer within the areas that were lit somewhat, lit brightly, and unlit. And as you can see, they estimated, this is outdoor. This is being affected by outdoor lighting. 73% higher breast cancer incidence. So it's crazy. But, you know, when you think about it, okay, we don't always look at the night like, well, how bright could it be, you know? This is, you know, for some folks, this is night. This is obviously a foggy night, so it made it even worse for this particular photograph, but this can be all night long, and now you can imagine how your body, how animals, how plants and everything are trying to figure out when's the night coming, you know? And yeah, there's a more recent, but still this is 2010, I believe. Yes. So this is still 9 years ago, and you can see there's quite an increase in the United States of light at night, and this is, you know, again, light just going up. So we have a very thin atmosphere of oxygen and that sustains our life. And it's like an apple skin on an apple, you know, when you get right down to it with Earth. And so, you know, anything we can do to reduce greenhouse gases, like reducing electrical use, is paramount nowadays. So you know, and I show this picture because sometimes you don't think of it that way. It's like, oh yeah, you know, it's okay, you know, a few smokestacks, you know, there's plenty of air up there. Not that you think that way, but you know, there seems to be a lot of thinking that way, sadly, today. But when you think of it as like an apple skin of an atmosphere, that's what you've got. Then go out and stand on the side of 95 for about 15 minutes and think, this goes on all day and all night, all over the world. So yeah, cars one thing, but you know, here we are, lighting. If we can use drastic measures to rein in lighting the way we use it and not shut it off when we're not using it, this is one win-win we can do. Just recently, the American Medical Association finally came out and said, I say finally because all that's research built came up to that. You gotta have research, you gotta have proof. And you wound up with an actual, these three key points here. Proper LED lighting used for energy conservation. Proper meaning all these aspects of using light better. Encourages to minimize and control blue-rich environmental lighting. Blue-rich, meaning the bluer it is, the more it's like the sunlight, and the more we all respond to it as such. And you'll see, I'm going to give you an example of that. So yeah, and then the policy that they have there. So the sun, your bluest white light, this is our frame of reference, this is what all our bodies react to, and what all our plants and animals were all guided by this source, this trigger for for the way our bodies work and do what we do in our lives, our wake time, our sleep time. LEDs, they are not light bulbs like we used to know, like this, though you can buy LED bulbs like this. They really are like what you see on the screen there. They're little chips, light emitting diodes, and that's what produces the light. It's incredible technology, it's wonderful, because this type of bulb, the original Edison bulb, didn't change that much from when Edison perfected it. And so for all those years, I'm trying to remember how much it was producing, I think it was about 75 or 80% heat, and the rest was light. So it's the type of thing that, you know, it was inefficient as all get out. You know, we're mostly producing heat. LEDs don't produce as much heat, and they do produce a little when they push them to get them brighter, but you know, they're still working on that, but it's extraordinary how much more efficient they are. And blue-white is the default color that they actually produce. So using your own eyes, is it possible to get the rest of the room lights? Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so. Yeah, sure, that'd be great. Okay, so.
Nobody falls asleep.
They already did. Okay, so. Now, I've created a dark environment, so your eyes are now adjusting and doing what they do at night. They're starting to say, okay, we've now settled into, eventually you will release a visual purple, they call it, which is it allows you to actually see better in the environment. And your cone cells in your eyes that react to light and color now start to fall back, and your rod cells now start to kick in, which are another set of light perceiving cells that are much more sensitive to low levels of light and they're not so involved with producing color. So you know, that's why if you notice, you get up in the middle of the night and you don't have any lights on, you can see like edges of tables and things like that, but it's all kind of monochromatic. It's all kind of like grays and deep blues. And that's what your rod cells are. They're producing that. So now, producing light, now, this is just a standard incandescent bulb, like the Edison bulb. And, you know, if I'm aiming at you like this, I can put it at a low level. And even at a low level, you might, if you're looking right at it against the dark background, you might say to yourself, oh, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable, because you've got a big contrast now between the light itself and the surrounds. Now, and I won't do this for long, I just want you to get the idea here that as I bring it up, you're gonna notice that it's gonna take over all you can see, because your eye is now saying, oh, there it is, there's the sun, you know, and everything behind it, including probably me, it starts to disappear. And this is just, I'm just showing you how your eyes work. So you already know, but this is an interesting aspect about them. And this is why glare is bad. Glare is unnecessary, because you can still light like this and go even brighter than I had it when you were looking before, and yet have visibility, because now we've reduced the contrast. And this is just simple shielding here. And this is where you will notice that, because of a lot of work we've done and working with the industry, that you're gonna see more lights that are shielded like this. It's tougher with LEDs in the sense that when you have those diodes, they're very small, so if you're not putting them in a bulb anymore, they tend to mount them right down here, and they tend to get bright down here. So it's easier to get glare when they're used that way. So this is a transition period now of trying to redo the whole, using the LEDs in a better way. So, of course, this is the old bulb, and it's very hot. Aren't I brave? Now, this is an interesting bulb that I was happy to find. Now, this, I'm going to aim this up a little bit just so I'm not nailing you in the eye, so you can get an idea. I want you to notice the difference. Now, this is a very warm color temperature. This is when you buy light bulbs, you can buy them in different color temperatures. You typically probably have seen them as cool bright, daylight bright, warm. Those are the terms they use, but the numbers are cool is in your 4,000, 5,000 K is the number. An old Edison bulb like this guy is about 2,700 K, much more yellow and warm. This one is a 2,200, I believe, right here, which is getting closer to those orange street lights. So the lower the number in those lower 2,000s, the warmer it gets. And when this neat little bulb, I can shut it off and shut it on, and then you get your different colors. Now this is a 2,700 at full brightness, which is like the Edison bulb, but this is an LED. So they've replicated the old ones pretty well, but now you see your eye is saying, whoa, there's way more information there than that last one. And now I'm gonna go to 5,000. Now, this is much bluer, as you can see, but the intensity, there's something there that's making your eyes, you know, it's harder to look at, because we're going back to the sun here. We're going back to all that blue, and even taking it a little bluer than the sun. So this is when you've got this much blue, this is what's gonna trigger all your things, your physiological triggers that happen with the sun, because it contains the most type of content that the sun has. We astronomers, we use these red flashlights, because red is like taking that orange tone you saw there and going way far to the other side. And you can sit here with a red flashlight like this and put it on a star chart that you're looking at or whatever, and it doesn't affect your night vision. Where if I turn on a bright flashlight that's even the warm orange color, my eyes will lose that night vision that I've built up over time, and it'll take me a while to get it back. So red flashlights, this is an extreme on the other side of the blue. And it doesn't, that tends to not affect us. That's why you see, you know, your alarm clocks and so forth in your houses are done with the red. Green ones, not good. That's just the opposite. So, put the regular clock in here. So yeah, this our big efforts in changing policy. Let's see if we're still here. So we're around with win-win solutions. We're finding, okay, what is it? What do we need? Number one, shielding, like this, shielding. Nobody wants to look at that bulb. That's crazy. Ideally, just like this Van Gogh painting, why can't we have the nightlife that we have and the starry sky at the same time? And this is doable. This is what we all want to reach for, because we're not going to stop nightlife from happening. I mean, this is part of society, you know. And so, how do we do it responsibly? And this is a photograph I took in Arizona, illustrating. And this is that glare buster light that she mentioned. This was, I was able to go to a guy's house there and take shots of it in use in one of the darkest places that I could get to. And you get this beautiful starry night sky, and you get your yard lit at the same time, because all that light's going down, and it's only the amount you need. So these are the solutions. Now, we passed Branford's Law, and we needed some sort of visual, simple guide, I found, after a short amount of time, for electricians and so forth, who, they don't know a lot, most of them, about lighting science, and that's not any, most people don't. It's not any knock on them. They're great at connecting wires and doing all those wonderful safety things that they do, but learning about light, it's a whole science unto itself. But in simplicity here, you've got, you know, this might seem like a real hammer and nail kind of answer, put a shield around it, but you know, it's amazing because you're serving the eye the way it works. And so this is crazy, because these illustrations that you see here, I made these because people were like, well, what kind of fixtures do you use? If you want to use the right thing, what do you use? And I'm like, the ones with the shields. And so, you know, what do you mean shields? So pictures were the way to do it. And to this day, every other week, I think, I get emails from all around the world. People are like, can I use that sheet that you used for the Branford Law? And like, this is now becoming like dinosauric technology of lights, because the LEDs look a little bit different than these. But I tell them, you know, use it. If it shows people how to shield, use it. But you know, it's like I gotta figure out, because not all LEDs are up to speed yet on the shielding part. But this is it, you know, shield those lights. Branford Intermediate School, built in 1972, was way ahead of its time in many ways, and too far ahead of its time in other ways. But one thing they had was these wonderful shielded lights. They had these shoebox lights that nobody had ever seen before. And I grew up right, you know, a block away from this place, so, you know, these lights, there's something about those lights, you know, there's light on the ground, but I'm not seeing this bright thing up on the top of the head. Today, you jump to today, these are LED lights. These are up on the rock pile, actually. When they were first gonna build the rock pile in Guilford, they came to me and had me help review all the lighting they were gonna do. The neighbors around were really concerned about it, and rightfully so. And then the whole thing went in dormant for years, and then I didn't get pulled back into it, but this is what they wound up with. And these are LED lights that are flat on the top, the light all goes down, and for the most part, you know, they're controlling the light getting off the site. It's still, you can imagine the problem though with the diode, the light source being so close to the bottom of the fixture. It's different than having a bulb up in a shield, so it's a little easier to see that light source.
Those individual parabolic reflectors or something, are those little wells that each diode is mounted?
Yeah, they try to recess them to a degree, but they're as close to the bottom, because when a lighting designer designs a light, the goal is to control that glare, but to get as much distribution as wide out like this as you can. And the more the bulb or the diode is recessed into the shield, it starts to do this. So you get a little bit less spread. And right now, we're going through this with Branford and the power company about what fixtures we can use. And for streetlights, because they're on the street lighting, I think Guilford's already been changed out, but the fixtures are not that great in the sense that you can see that light source. So it's the kind of thing I'm working with them to try to give us an option where the shield is better. This is off of 91 and near Hartford. It's actually in Weathersfield. Beautiful example of the light contained to the site. You can see there's natural area around it, but the light is it's like captured moonlight on this beautiful parking lot. And that's it, because it's shielded. It's like this. The street lights that we got to put in, the state put in, shielded like this. The new ones, this is what they look like with the LEDs in them. Comparison of the old and the new, you can see here the ones without the glare are the shielded, and the old ones are the balls of glowing light. Even decorative fixtures now, they hide the bulb up into the top of the fixture where it's all opaque, and then just have an empty chimney down the bottom that just glows, and they're beautiful. So even the old type of lights like this, the light's hidden, the light source is hidden, but you get that beautiful glow, and it works. So, you know, I've told you a lot. I don't know how, I'm probably overrunning time here because you probably have some questions. So in Branford, essentially I'll just zoom right through these, working with the wonderful folks there, Shirley Rasmussen and Justine Gillen, when we passed the law in Branford in 1997. And we would just, like, they're looking at a site plan, and they're reviewing a site plan to make sure the lights met the regulations that we had. They were the simplest out there and were copied by several other municipalities. And then I even made a little light meter that went on a stick with a wheel that Justine could take and just double check the site, you know, once it was installed to make sure it met the original plan. She rarely had to do that. That thing collected dust more than anything else, because once you got them to understand and do it, usually you didn't have to do follow-up. So it's now the Regal Cinema, was the Hoyt Cinema when it first came in. They came in just as we passed the law, and this is what it looked like when they were built. They built the site, and a month later, these lights were there, and there's a whole neighborhood behind this place, and this is what it looked like. So Steve Dudley, Guilford guy, who was the town engineer, went to them and said, look, we're doing this no law, you know, can you shield these lights? Can you build shields for these lights? And now she said, yeah, so this is before and this is after. So, you know, now all the neighbors that were up on the hill behind this place, no more of that light blaring into their windows. So, you know, win-win. The first car dealership in Branford, via the law, this was Branfon Honda, which has changed its lights a few times now, but this was the original one that went in there. Look at that. Captured light all around the site, beautiful. And at the time, the whole entire dealership was using 9,000 watts of lighting power, which you might think that's a lot. 9,000 for the entire dealership at the time. If they're LEDs, it'd be way less than that, but 9,000. And then I show you this, because you remember this from before. This is David McDermott's site. Now, the first 3 lighting poles you see right there, I think there's almost 30 poles in this place. The first 3 poles right there use 9,000 watts. So this was a huge, you know, ding, light bulb over the head moment of, okay, you can light a car dealership well and do it with a ton less energy. And, you know, same thing here, you don't have to read all this. This was a before on a mobile station and after. You know, it's just, your eye is much happier looking at that than looking at this, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's beautiful on top of everything else. And here's some of the first billboards that were utilizing the downlighting. So policy has changed in lighting now, where the industry that studies lighting now takes into account everything that's above, which is the blue part of the light here, what's forward coming out of the fixture, and what's shining behind it in case there's like people who live behind the commercial area where you are. And this is myself, Cliff Haas, and Leo Smith presenting for the Connecticut legislative, there's a transportation commission, I think, where you can see I had my clip-on light back then too, this guy, you know, demonstrating the simple reason why we wanted to put these laws in place, which we passed a street lighting law, the old type and then the new type, and of course this is already old because this was 2001. So this is before LEDs, but you can see they were changing out to a much better shielded fixture, and now this, like I said, this is the new LED types that have followed suit. And the original bad floodlights that were shining in the roads had to be shielded and aimed down so that they would look more like this, so they're lighting only the site and not blasting it into the roads. So yeah, all the benefits right there. This is just a review of all that, and I never, in getting any of this done, talked about, but my starry night sky, you're killing it. You know, because you don't have to. This is, everybody wins with this. And yeah, you know, it's just, it winds up being common sense. Awareness is the difference. You know, the difference is awareness. And we all should have this. Every child today should have this, the Milky Way, and the ability to imagine, because a child's universe is only as big as what you can see. You know, and if you look out at night and you see a speck here, a speck there, and then a plane going across an orange sky, that's your universe. And your imagination is only that big. So, you know, this is what got me into this in the first place, because I witnessed a dramatic change from being a child to having my own daughter, my first daughter, and realizing I couldn't even show her the Milky Way where I grew up, which was crazy. So this is the long saga, and I hope it's been entertaining for you of what brought me to get out there and get the awareness out and pass laws. And I even wrote the children's book, There Once Was a Sky Full of Stars, which explains at a child's level this whole idea of, you know, the stars are up there. And it's a happy ending book because, you know, it's that easy to fix. We just need to know. So, yeah, that's all my tools that I've created for helping bring back our environment, the night environment. And it's that important, as you can see. Now, I imagine you probably have some questions.
Bob, thank you. First of all, thank you very much.
I can turn on the ones that were just on.
Okay, I'll let you do that. So thank you very much, and we'll take a few minutes, and I'm sure Bob will answer some questions. And since we have some additional light for safety. So what are your questions?
Yes.
You talked about legislation, excuse me, in Brantford. Does that require retrofitting, or is it just for new construction?
Okay. He asked me about.
And also, if I could also ask, do we have similar regulations in Guilford?
Okay. His question was, in Brantford, the laws that we passed, does it require retrofitting, or is it only for new construction, right? And then Guilford, does Guilford have similar legislation? Well, it would be really difficult, it would have been really difficult to say, okay, the law is now enacted in 1997, everybody's got to change their lights, because that would be expensive. So we had to do it in a evolving way, in the sense that when lights were changed, you know, because the elements eventually get to outdoor things like light fixtures, so they eventually need to be changed, or a new design comes in, or a new business comes in, like that car dealership. These were the points where they, okay, now you gotta meet the regulations. So you're gonna change your lights on your building, even if it's 1 or 2 lights, they've gotta meet the new requirements. And the all new lighting would then have to meet these requirements as well. And it had to do with shielding, it had to do with, you know, whether or not you were trespassing on neighboring residential areas or on the roadway. And we used lighting industry standards, which thankfully they had wonderful handbooks on how much light you really need for a convenience store parking lot or a cinema or whatever. And by following those were way less than what you see out there in the field, because the regulation became the line in the sand, which that's all you needed. So Guilford, Guilford does not have these regulations, but you've got some wonderful people, and especially Jan Plasiak now, the town engineer, who was Branford's town engineer, who worked with me a lot, and Steve Dudley when he was there, to be able to keep an eye on this stuff, because Guilford is a lot more ahead of being overrun by bad lighting. But it doesn't take long, and especially with LEDs, without someone keeping an eye on it. So the town, the town has some people who are sensitive to it within the government, but I don't think there's similar type of regulations like there are in Branford, which there could be, but I know it's in everyone's hearts here.
I'll
yeah.
answer the town part. The town, actually, the part of the reason why we asked them kind of have you as a speaker is to kind of bring this to the foreground with Guilford here, and get something rolling with our regulations. Guilford's actually going into a rewrite of our regulations,
Good.
and hopefully, we're gonna be pulling this in and looking at Branford's information there, and maybe once we get to those chapters, maybe invite you in or getting some help, some advice from you and other experts in the area to update them even beyond. Part of changing regulations, look at other towns, but as you're saying, since you wrote the Branford ones, things have changed with LEDs and kind of need to be with the new rewrite, include the LED technology into it also.
Yeah. Well, and now you've got other tools like the AMA, saying, 3000 K or warmer, which is very important, because when you drive down the street and see those blue white lights that are just like knocking you out, that's like 4000 or 5000 K, which is much higher than what the AMA is recommending. And the AMA is even a compromise with the industry, because by default, the LEDs put out a blue or white light, and it takes monkeying with them. Currently, it takes monkeying with them to get them warmer, but they've at least figured out a way to bring it in, rein it in a bit and get warmer with them. So 3000 K is a sort of a compromise point, which is gonna be warmer, a little more yellow, and honestly, the warmer than that would even be better. But you're gonna also find that, law enforcement sometimes likes to be able to discern colors as best they can. And if it gets too warm, like the orange high pressure sodium streetlights, you wind up, it's a little harder to discern colors if you're trying to identify the color of a car or a shirt somebody's wearing, So, these compromises are all coming from real places, so. But, it's a good place to work from. Yeah, I'm happy to see what happens next.
Yeah, I was a little unclear. Is there a state regulation that's being developed or exists?
The state regulations that we passed, and actually there's even more in the works, but they're broader sweeping things, and the state law we passed, you saw the street lighting funded by state funds, because that's how you can do it on a state level. Of course, there was no, it's really hard to find an enforcing body to be able to actually go in there, so it's almost like it's gotta be a conversation that's out in the open, because it's a law, So we've had a lot of luck with street lighting because of the actual state law, and then the flood lighting, you'll notice a lot of those shields, because that's still going on, because there was no timeline except for when they replaced them. So some of the ones that are out there might be older, but they're still getting shielded. And then the other state actions are building codes that Leo Smith has been working on, where it's like he's trying to get that 3000 K color as the standard that no one can go any bluer than that. And so these are all things that, and he's been way more active in recent years than I have, just because I've got more things in my personal life that take more time to be able to go up and present for the legislators. So there is more on the books, but it's something that like if folks have the interest and wherewithal to call your lawmakers about this, that really helps. Because especially in things like the building code, the more the lawmakers hearing about this, when it comes up, they're like, oh, I know what that is, 3,000 K, yeah, my constituents have called me about that, you know, and so, yeah, I mean, right now, that's the one I know that is being kicked around, is actually reining in the building code to say 3,000 K, meaning the color of the light.
I'm a little confused about that point, because, I mean, what's the difference between 3,000 K and the higher color temperatures are more efficient, I believe, from an energy standpoint.
No, they're not more efficient, they just, your eye responds to
You don't get
them.
more lumens per watt?
Not that I know of, it's more about how your eye responds to it. The bluer it is, your eye's gonna respond to it.
Numbers is telling you, like, right.
Yeah, there is a measure of how you measure lumens, the candle power. But it's, your eye perceives the blue more readily, so you may be able to use a lower wattage LED in a bluer light, but if you're looking at the light source, it's defeating your visual acuity. So it's all this
Yeah, you don't
dance.
wanna look at it, like.
Yeah. So in other words, yeah, if you use the bluer the light, but you know, the thing is now you're also talking about all those other physiological possibilities of
That
affecting.
may be a different issue.
Yeah, so it's, you know, we're all figuring this out as we go. And so far, you know, I've laid out everything we know to this day, and, you know, tomorrow we may know even more. But it's a good question, thank you. Yes?
Just a point about building codes, I used to be involved in the development of them for the State Department of Public Safety. And when they are developing a new code, they conduct hearings to gather public comment. And I used to see Leo's letters. I last worked on the 05 code. So that's, rather than having to deal with legislators, you can deal with the administrative agency that adopts the regulation.
Right. Yeah, Leo's really great. He was able to take something that I was trying to do, and we partnered up, and he could really sit down with a lot of the legislators and you know, talk it through and show, you know, and then when we would present, you know, I would just do the horse and pony show here, you know, and it was always well received, because I put it in a person's experience, their own personal experience, and Leo could talk the you know, the actual law side of it, you know, and the nuts and bolts, which
He was pretty effective too.
Oh, I know, and he still is. He's still out there.
So, one more question, anyone? All right, we promised the library that we'll, you know, vacate by 8 o'clock, so we've got 6 minutes. Well, once again,
Thank you.
I do want to say that every day I commute from the Guilford train station, and the lights in the Guilford train station, big dark covers on them, and they push the light down, and it works. So we've already got some of this going on here. So anyway, thanks so much, and we appreciate you coming tonight. Take care.